The Grand Chamberlain of the Consensus, Xyler, let the silence hang in the chime hall, a space carved from the heart of a sentient crystal moonlit where the resonant frequencies of debate were said to shape the future of their billion-year-old civilization. The air itself, a carefully composed mixture of noble gases and memory-laced aerosols, seemed to hold its breath. Around the circular obsidian platform, the Lumina, the designated leaders of the assembled species, waited, their forms shimmering in the soft, internal light of the chamber. Some were crystalline, some gaseous, some biological constructs of such intricate design that their very stillness was a testament to their mastery over life itself. Yet, a collective disquiet hummed beneath the polished calm, a discordance that had not been felt in millennia. It emanated from a single, irritatingly persistent topic: the sentient species from the third planet of a minor yellow star, a species they called humans. The hololith in the center of the chamber pulsed with a soft, azure light, displaying the world in question. They had designated it a death world, a classification reserved for planets of such extreme environmental hostility that the emergence of complex, sentient life was considered a statistical impossibility, a cosmic error. The world was a maelstrom of tectonic violence, possessing a volatile, oversized moon that churned its oceans into chaotic tides. It was orbited by asymmetrical debris fields, scarred by a history of cataclysmic impacts, and possessed an atmosphere that was a corrosive, oxidizing brew. Its star was prone to violent, unpredictable flares. The life that had clawed its way into existence there was a testament to this brutality, a relentless, savage cycle of consumption and predation, a biosphere perpetually at war with itself. And from this primordial furnace, humanity had risen. The core of our bewilderment remains, Xyler's voice resonated, not through the air, but directly within the consciousness of each Lumina, a gentle, melodic chime that carried the weight of ages. The signals we have passively collected from this, Earth, do not align with the known psychologies of a deathworld species. We anticipated broadcasts of conquest, declarations of dominance, the raw, unfiltered aggression of a species forged in planetary fire. We expected to hear the screams of a world locked in perpetual, violent competition. He gestured a delicate, multi-jointed limb toward the hololith. The image shifted. It was no longer the turbulent planet, but a cascade of translated human data, a symphony of immense complexity, a torrent of mathematical proofs, intricate visual art that depicted sorrow and joy with equal reverence, philosophical treatises that debated the nature of existence, with a fervor the consensus had long since abandoned for quiet certainty. There were sounds, too, music of such haunting, melancholic beauty, that it made the very crystal of the chime hall vibrate with a strange, unfamiliar resonance. It was the sound of a species that had not only survived its brutal cradle, but had found the time and the will to weep for it, to celebrate it, to question it. Instead, Xyler continued, his mental voice laced with a profound, ancient weariness, we receive this, an outpouring of structured chaos. They broadcast their deepest vulnerabilities alongside their most profound discoveries. Their fictions are filled with as much self-recrimination as they are with heroism. They build tools of astonishing destructive potential and then spend generations debating the ethics of their use. They are a species that seems to be in a constant state of argument with its own soul. This is not the behavior of a simple predator. A deep, low hum emanated from Lumina Faust, a being of pure, contained energy whose form flickered like a captive star. They are emergent, unpredictable. Their technological ascent is alarming. It is a vertical climb without the long, stable plateaus of development that characterize a mature civilization. They have split the atom after only a few millennia of what they call civilization. They have reached their own moon while still squabbling over the resources of their home world. Their trajectory is not one of stability. It is one of uncontrolled acceleration. A species born of chaos seems to embrace it as its natural state of being. And that is the danger, chimed in a third voice, this one belonging to Matriarch Vor, whose corporeal form was a complex network of symbiotic fungal colonies, her thoughts smelling of damp earth and ancient patience. A species that does not fear chaos is a species that can unleash it upon the galaxy without a second thought. Their history, which we have painstakingly translated, is a litany of self-inflicted catastrophes. They wage war on themselves with a ferocity we have not witnessed since the galaxy's infancy. They poison their own environment. They create ideologies that lead the systematic destruction of their own kind. And yet, they endure. They rebuild. They learn, but their learning seems only to grant them more potent means of repeating their mistakes. What happens when such a species breaks the bonds of their gravity well and looks outward with that same volatile, unpredictable nature? Silence returned to the chime hall, thicker this time. The question was the fear that lay at the heart of their debate. The consensus was an edifice of stability, a civilization that had curated peace across countless star systems for eons. They had achieved this through meticulous planning, through the gentle guidance of emergent species, through the careful pruning of existential threats before they could blossom. They were gardeners in the vast, cosmic expanse, and humanity was a weed of unknown properties, one that might be a nutrient-rich miracle or a world-choking poison. Their power source is primitive, Fowles hummed, attempting to ground the conversation in tangible data. Fission, fusion, they are still burning things to create energy like savages huddling around a fire. Their interstellar travel is theoretical, their communications leaky and inefficient. They are, by all our metrics, a nascent pre-stellar civilization. They are no immediate threat. Are they? Xyler countered, his mental chime sharp for the first time. We once believed the Cathar were no threat. They were a silicon-based species confined to a single high-gravity world, quiet and seemingly introspective. We ignored them for 1,000 of their years. When we finally turned our attention back, we found they had converted their entire home world into a computational engine and were moments away from calculating a method to unravel the fabric of spacetime itself, simply because their philosophy dictated that existence was a flaw that needed to be corrected. We intervened at the last possible moment. We underestimated their internal drive, their philosophical core. We must not make the same mistake with humanity. He paused, letting the memory of that near catastrophe settle into the chamber. These humans, they possess a quality we have not encountered before. It is not their technology that concerns me, nor their history of violence. It is their resilience. They have faced plagues, ice ages, famines, and self-inflicted apocalypses, and they are still there, still broadcasting their songs of sorrow and defiance into the void. There is a strength in that which our models cannot quantify. A species that has stared into the abyss of its own extinction so many times and has not blinked. What will it do when it discovers it is not alone in the universe? Will it see us as a threat, as a resource, as a puzzle to be solved? We do not know, and it is that ignorance that is the greatest danger of all. Matriarch Vor shifted her great mass, the scent of ozone and deep soil filling the air. Then we must rectify that ignorance. A direct observation is too risky. A probe could be misinterpreted. Any form of overt contact could trigger their inherent xenophobia, a trait we have seen in abundance in their fictions. They are, it seems, deeply afraid of the other. So we continue to watch. Fowles pulsed with frustration. We wait for them to build their faster-than-light drives and appear on our doorstep with their chaotic energies and their unknowable intentions. No, Xyler said, his voice regaining its calm, melodic certainty. We do not wait, and we do not hide. We do something that is, for us, radical. We invite them to learn, and in doing so, we will learn from them. A murmur of surprise, a ripple of discordant chimes, filled the hall. It was a proposal that went against every protocol of the First Contact Concordance, a set of rules established over geologic time to prevent cultural contamination and existential shock. Xyler raised a limb, silencing the disquiet. We will not go to them. We will invite a delegation to a neutral space, a place of learning, a place where our brightest young minds can interact with their chosen representatives. We will frame it not as a summons or a confrontation, but as an academic exchange, an invitation to join a galactic dialogue. We will create a controlled environment where we can study them up close, understand their psychology, their philosophy, their ethics. We will use our students, our most open and inquisitive minds, to probe their depths. The idea was audacious. To expose their own youth, the future of the consensus, to a species they considered dangerously unpredictable. It was a gamble of unprecedented scale. We will send the invitation, Xyler continued, his decision solidifying as he spoke. We will establish a temporary academy in the Uit cloud of their own star system, a gesture of non-aggression. We will ask them to send their best scholars, their thinkers, their artists. We will tell them that we are a collection of civilizations that wishes to learn. It is a truth, after all. And they, a species that broadcasts its every thought into the cosmos, seem to have a deep-seated desire to be understood. The chamber fell silent once more, but this time it was a silence of contemplation, not of fear. The Lumina considered the plan. It was elegant. It was subtle. It was a way to turn humanity's own nature, its curiosity, its desire for connection, its intellectual vanity, into a tool for their own assessment. The students, Matriarch Vor finally spoke, her earthy thoughts resonating with a grudging approval. They will be our eyes and ears. They will learn the answer to the most important question. Xyler turned his gaze back to the swirling blue-green image of the death world. Indeed, they will learn why a species born of such unrelenting horror does not scream but sings. The finality in his chime was absolute. The consensus had a plan. The grand, terrifying, and utterly necessary experiment was about to begin. The students would be sent to learn why Earth was called a death world, but what they would discover was something far more profound and far more unsettling, what it meant to be truly, terrifyingly alive. The Orbital Academy, designated Stasis Point Kepler by the consensus, was a marvel of restrained engineering. It was not a grand city in space, nor a weaponized fortress. It was a simple, elegant ring, spun from a carbon silicate composite that absorbed all light, making it nearly invisible against the black tapestry of the void. It hung in the silent, frozen expanse of the Uit cloud, a place of profound stillness at the very edge of the solar system, a location chosen with deliberate care. It was a gesture that said, "We come in peace, and we will not approach your cradle uninvited." Inside, the environment was a perfect median of the atmospheric and gravitational norms of the core consensus worlds. The corridors were wide and silent, lined with glowing panels that shifted through calming color spectrums. The air was a sterile, odorless mix, precisely calibrated for the comfort of the alien delegation. It was a place of pure, dispassionate intellect, a temple dedicated to the serene acquisition of knowledge, and it was utterly, profoundly unnerving to its young occupants. There were several dozen of them, the brightest scions of the most influential species within the consensus. Lyra, a Zalosian like the Grand Chamberlain, her form a slender, graceful collection of crystalline limbs that chimed softly when she moved. Kale, a creature of the gaseous nebulae, his consciousness bound within a shimmering, semi-transparent containment field that drifted silently along the corridors. And Alara, a botanist from the lineage of Matriarch Vor, her skin a mosaic of bioluminescent fungi that shifted in color with her thoughts. They, and others like them, had been raised in worlds of perfect harmony, on histories that stretched back, unbroken, for millions of years. Their education had been one of logic, reason, and the deep, abiding certainty of the consensus's benevolent order. The concept of a death world was, for them, a terrifying abstraction, a cautionary tale used to illustrate the importance of their stable, managed existence. Now, that abstraction was about to become a reality. They had studied the translated human data for the entire journey. They had watched the recordings of their wars, listened to their symphonies, read their poetry, and analyzed their scientific theorems. The information was a chaotic jumble of contradictions. They saw moments of breathtaking compassion followed by acts of unimaginable cruelty. They saw a species that could compose odes to a flower and then incinerate entire cities. They saw beings who preached peace and love while simultaneously perfecting weapons of mass destruction. Their tutors had tried to provide a framework for understanding this, describing it as evolutionary psychosis, a species whose cognitive abilities had outpaced its primal instincts, leaving it in a perpetual state of internal conflict. But the explanation felt hollow, an academic label placed on a maelstrom. "Their vessel has translated from its superluminal transit," came the synthesized voice through the station's internal communicators. The announcement was calm, devoid of emotion, yet it sent a tremor of anxiety through the student delegation. They gathered in the main observation dome, a vast, curved space that looked out into the stardusted abyss. In the distance, a flicker of distorted spacetime resolved itself. The students had expected a warship. Based on human fiction and their violent history, they had braced themselves for a vessel bristling with weapon emplacements, shielded in thick, brutalist armor, a physical manifestation of their aggressive nature. What appeared was something else entirely. It was a single ship, not large by consensus standards, and it was shaped like a teardrop, a smooth, seamless form of polished, obsidian-like material. All that seemed to drink the starlight. There were no visible weapon ports, no sensor arrays, no aggressive lines. It moved with a silent, effortless grace, gliding into a synchronous orbit with Stasis Point Kepler as if it were a fish joining a current. The ship was beautiful, and its beauty was deeply unsettling. It bespoke a confidence that was not born of aggression, but of something deeper, something more absolute. A silent, coded message was exchanged, a simple string of prime numbers followed by a map of the elements, the universal greeting of intelligent life. The humans had understood it instantly. Their reply was equally elegant, a complex, multi-layered signal that contained their own genome, a complete history of their art and science, and a simple, formal message in the consensus's primary trade language. We accept your invitation. We come to learn and to share. The docking procedure was flawless. An extending corridor from the station met a perfectly circular iris on the human ship. There was no jarring clang of metal, no hiss of escaping atmosphere, just a silent, perfect seal. The students, accompanied by their senior tutors, stood waiting in the main reception chamber, a large, open space designed to be as non-threatening as possible. The air was thick with their collective apprehension. The door at the end of the corridor irised open. The students braced themselves. What would they look like, these Deathworlders? Would they be hulking, scarred creatures, their bodies shaped by a lifetime of brutal competition? Would their eyes hold the cold gleam of a predator? The first human to step through was an elderly female. She was small, her body seemingly fragile, her skin wrinkled with age. She wore a simple dark blue garment that was functional and unadorned. Her hair was white, and her eyes, as she scanned the assembled aliens, were not filled with aggression or fear, but with a calm, penetrating curiosity. She held no weapon, only a small, flat data device in one hand. Behind her came two others, a male and another female, both younger, both dressed in similarly simple attire. They moved with a quiet economy of motion, their expressions open and serene. They were utterly, shockingly normal. The lead human, the elderly female, stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Alina Vance," she said. Her voice, translated through her data device, was clear and steady. "On behalf of the people of Earth, we thank you for your gracious invitation. We have come with an open mind, eager to begin this historic exchange." Lyra, standing at the forefront of the student delegation, felt a chime of pure confusion resonate through her crystalline form. This was not what she had expected. There was no arrogance, no barely concealed aggression. There was only a profound and unsettling stillness about them. It was the stillness of a deep ocean, which gives no hint of the power it holds beneath the surface. The initial days of the exchange were a carefully choreographed dance of diplomacy and academic inquiry. The humans were given quarters, and they moved through the sterile, silent station with a quiet adaptability that was in itself surprising. They did not complain about the synthesized food, the sterile air, or the uniform, low-gravity environment. They simply adapted, their bodies and minds seemingly plastic, capable of accepting new realities without distress. The learning began in the station's grand library, a repository of consensus knowledge. The humans were given access to the archives, and they absorbed information with a terrifying speed. Their questions were not about technology or military power, as the students had anticipated. Instead, they asked about philosophy, about art, about the consensus's understanding of ethics and morality. "You have existed for 1 billion years," Ambassador Vance said during one of the first sessions, her gaze fixed on the shimmering form of Kale. "Your history is a near unbroken line of peace and stability. You have eliminated poverty, disease, and war. It is a remarkable achievement. But tell me, how do you define goodness in a society where there is no longer a struggle against evil?" The question stunned the assembled students and tutors. The consensus did not think in such terms. Goodness was the baseline, the natural state of a rational, ordered existence. Evil was a chaotic anomaly, a sickness that had been cured eons ago. Kale, whose species had long ago transcended such simplistic dualities, struggled to form an answer. "Goodness is adherence to the logical order of the universe," he finally projected. "It is the pursuit of knowledge, the preservation of life, the maintenance of stability. It is the opposite of chaos." Ambassador Vance considered this, her head tilted slightly. "I see. For you, chaos is the enemy. For us, chaos is the crucible. It is the force that has shaped us. It is the fire in which our ethics were forged. We did not learn compassion by living in a world without suffering. We learned it by staring suffering in the face every day and choosing to act against it. We did not learn the value of peace by never knowing war. We learned it by crawling out of the ashes of our own self-destruction time and time again and vowing, never again. Our goodness is not a passive state. It is an active choice, a constant struggle. Perhaps that is the fundamental difference between us." The words hung in the silent chamber, and for the first time, the alien students began to understand. They had seen human history as a record of failure. The humans saw it as a record of their education. The true reveal, the moment that shattered the consensus's carefully constructed paradigm of humanity, came not in a philosophical debate, but in a practical demonstration. It was in a vast, empty chamber, a holodeck of immense power, capable of simulating entire worlds. The human delegation had requested its use, and the consensus, curious, had agreed. Ambassador Vance stood in the center of the dark, empty space, alongside her younger colleague, a man named Dr. Aris Thorne. "For several of our weeks," Thorne began, his voice calm and professional, "we have been studying the public unencrypted signals you broadcast across your civilization. Your art, your histories, your scientific journals. The information is vast, and we have barely scratched the surface. But our purpose here is to foster understanding. And we believe the best way to do that is to show you how we see you." With a simple gesture on his data pad, the chamber transformed. The students gasped, a collective intake of breath that was a mixture of awe and shock. They were no longer in a sterile black room. They were standing on a high plateau on Xylar, the crystal moonlet. The sky above was a swirling nebula of familiar colors. The air resonated with the gentle, chiming music of the sentient crystals, and in the distance, they could see the impossibly slender spires of the chime hall itself. The simulation was perfect. Not just visually, but in every conceivable sensory detail. Lyra could feel the familiar resonant vibrations in her own crystalline limbs. Kale could feel the subtle gravitational tides that his gaseous form was accustomed to. Alara could smell the faint, metallic scent of the crystalline flora. "This is impossible," a tutor stammered, his mental voice a discordant screech. "To create a simulation of this fidelity would require a complete scan of our world, a process that would take decades and would be impossible to conceal." "We did not scan your world," Dr. Thorne said calmly. "We have never been to your world. We built this from your art, from your poetry, from the mathematical principles embedded in your architecture and the harmonic frequencies in your music. We extrapolated it. Your art told us how you perceive beauty. Your physics told us the laws that govern your reality. Your history told us what you value. We did not need to see your world to understand it. We only needed to listen to its soul." He gestured again. The scene dissolved and reformed. Now they stood in a vast, bioluminescent forest on Alara's home world. Giant, glowing fungi pulsed with a soft, internal light, and the air was thick with the rich scent of damp earth and decaying life. Alara let out a soft, involuntary cry of recognition. It was a perfect recreation of the grove of ancestors, a place so sacred that depictions of it were forbidden. "How," she whispered, her own fungal patterns glowing with agitated disbelief. "There are no records of this place." "There are not," Ambassador Vance said gently. "But there are records of your species' grief. We analyzed the subharmonics in your funeral dirges, the metaphorical structures in your elegiac poetry. They all pointed to a recurring environmental constant, a place of profound spiritual significance tied to the cycle of decay and rebirth. Our systems merely constructed the most logical possibility. It seems they were correct." The demonstration continued. They were shown simulations of a dozen consensus worlds, each one rendered with impossible fidelity, each one constructed not from direct observation, but from a deep, empathetic analysis of that species' culture. The humans had not just seen their data, they had understood it, on a level that the consensus themselves had never consciously articulated. They had held up a mirror, and the reflection was more real than the original. The final simulation was the one that broke them. The chamber went dark again, and then a single image appeared, the swirling, chaotic, beautiful maelstrom of Earth, but they were not seeing it from orbit. They were on the surface, standing on a windswept cliff overlooking a raging, storm-tossed ocean. The air was cold and wet, the wind howled with a raw, untamed fury, and the taste of salt was sharp on their sensors. It was terrifying, it was violent, and it was breathtakingly, reekingly beautiful. "This is our home," Ambassador Vance said, her voice soft but clear over the roar of the simulated wind. "For millennia, we thought it was a prison, a brutal, unforgiving crucible designed to test our limits. We fought against it. We tried to tame it. We cursed it for its cruelty, but we were wrong. It was not our prison. It was our teacher." She turned to face the stunned aliens, her elderly face illuminated by the flashes of simulated lightning. "Our world taught us that stability is an illusion. That balance is not a state to be achieved, but a constant, dynamic process. It taught us that systems, whether they are ecological, social, or psychological, are most resilient when they are diverse, chaotic, and capable of rapid adaptation. Your civilization is a perfectly straight line. It is beautiful, but it is brittle. A single, unexpected force could shatter it. Our civilization is a storm. It is chaotic and destructive, but it is also endlessly creative, endlessly resilient. We do not fear the storm. We have learned to dance in the rain." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into the profound silence that had fallen over the chamber. You classify our world as a death world because life there is difficult because it is a constant struggle. We do not call it that, we call it home. And we have learned its most important lesson, that the only true death is the absence of struggle. You invited us here to see if we were a threat. The truth is, we are not your enemy, we are your future. We are the change that is coming to a universe you thought was static. The question is not whether you can contain us. The question is whether you are willing to learn from us. Simulation faded, leaving them once more in the sterile, black chamber. But it was no longer a neutral space. It was a courtroom, and the entire philosophy of the consensus, a billion years of placid certainty, had just been placed on trial. The students looked at the three calm, unassuming humans, and for the first time they did not see a primitive, chaotic species. They saw their teachers, and they were, for the first time in their long, peaceful lives, truly, profoundly afraid, not of destruction, but of the terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly necessary prospect of change. The journey back to the Chime Hall was a silent, somber affair. The students, once the proudest and most certain minds of their generation, were now adrift in a sea of doubt. The reports they had filed, filled with the recordings of the human demonstrations and their own awestruck, terrified analyses, had preceded them. The data had already sent shockwaves through the consensus, a seismic event that had cracked the very foundations of their billion-year-old worldview. When they arrived, the atmosphere in the grand chamber was not one of anger or fear, but of profound, stunned silence. The lumina were assembled, their forms less radiant, their certainty replaced by a heavy, contemplative stillness. Xyler, the Grand Chamberlain, stood at the center, his crystalline form seeming to absorb the light rather than refract it. He turned his attention to the returning students, primarily to Lyra, whose own chimes were now muted, her usual clarity clouded by the immensity of what she had witnessed. You have seen them. Xyler's mental voice was not a question, but a statement heavy with the weight of consequence. You have spoken with them. You have stood within their creations. Your reports are comprehensive, but data lacks the resonance of experience. Tell us, what are they? Lyra stepped forward onto the obsidian platform, her soft chimes a stark contrast to the oppressive silence. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, to find the words, the frequencies that could convey the truth. We were sent to study a deathworld species, she began, her mental voice clear but trembling with the force of her conviction. We found instead a species that has mastered the art of living. We have existed. They have lived. She recounted the encounters, not just the data points, but the feeling, the calm intellectual hunger of Ambassador Vance, the focused, creative brilliance of Dr. Thorne, the quiet, unshakable confidence that emanated from them all. She described the philosophical debates, the way the humans embraced contradiction and paradox as essential components of truth, a concept alien to the consensus's rigid logic. They are not chaotic, she explained, her chimes gaining strength. They are complex. They have internalized the chaotic nature of their world and turned it into their greatest strength. They call it antifragility, the quality of a system that grows stronger when exposed to stressors, volatility, and randomness. We, the consensus, are a fragile system. We have spent a billion years eliminating stressors, creating a perfect, unchanging stasis. We believed this was strength. The humans have shown us it is our most profound weakness. We are a crystal goblet, perfect and beautiful, but a single sharp blow will shatter us. They are a river, endlessly adaptable, capable of carving canyons through stone. Matriarch Vor, whose scent of ancient patience now seemed more like stagnation, stirred. Their history is one of self-destruction. You would have us emulate this. Their history is one of surviving self-destruction, Alara, the botanist, interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Lyra. Her bioluminescent patterns swirled with passionate colors. They have faced plagues that would have shattered a less adaptable species, and they developed medicine. They have faced global conflicts that would have ended a less resilient species, and they developed diplomacy and a desire for unity. Their world has tried to freeze them, burn them, and poison them, and they have developed science. Every crisis, every catastrophe has been a lesson. Their scars are their credentials. We have no scars. We have no credentials for the true universe, the one that lies beyond our carefully manicured garden. The chamber was silent. The truth of their words was undeniable, a cold, hard fact that chilled the warm, stable air. The consensus had mistaken peace for strength, stability for resilience. They were a civilization of scholars who had never taken a final exam. Humanity had been taking them and failing them and taking them again every day of their existence. It was then that Xyler turned to the hololith, which now displayed the serene, black form of the human vessel, still waiting patiently in the Uit cloud. "They did not come here merely to teach," he chimed, a new note of understanding in his voice. "They came with a purpose. Ambassador Vance's final report to us was more than a philosophical treatise." He activated the hololith, and the chamber was filled with the calm, steady face of Eleanor Vance, recorded just hours before. "While analyzing your vast and beautiful network of communications," she began, her voice filled with a quiet gravity, "our systems, which are designed to find patterns in chaos, detected an anomaly. It is something your own sensors have undoubtedly recorded for eons, but likely dismissed as background noise. A faint, deeply redshifted repeating signal buried beneath the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is structured, it is artificial, and it is very, very old." The hololith shifted, displaying a complex waveform analysis. A faint, rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat, was isolated from a sea of cosmic static. "The signal originates from a point beyond the local galactic group," Vance continued. "Its age is difficult to determine, but it is at least several billion years old. It predates your consensus. It may predate our own sun. We have spent the entirety of our return journey deciphering its core message. It is, we believe, a distress call, a warning." A new image appeared on the hololith, a reconstruction based on the signal's encoded data. It was a terrifying, beautiful sight, a galaxy-spanning structure, a network of filaments and nodes that seemed to encompass an entire galactic cluster, all dark, all silent. A ghost of a civilization on a scale the consensus could barely comprehend. "The message is fragmented," Vance's voice explained, "eroded by time and distance, but we have pieced together its essence. It speaks of a force, a phenomenon that they called the Silence. It was not an invader, not a species. It was a process, a wave of cosmic-scale entropy that seemed to target and extinguish complex, ordered systems, life, consciousness, civilization. The signal is the last testament of a civilization that tried to fight it, that built this megastructure as a final, desperate shield. And they failed. The signal is not just a warning, it is a tombstone." The recording ended, leaving the chime hall in a silence more profound than any that had come before. The fear of humanity, which had so recently gripped them, seemed laughably small, pathetically parochial. They had been worried about a single, chaotic planet, while a force that could extinguish galaxies had been moving silently through the void. "Why?" Fowles hummed, his energy form flickering with agitation. "Why would they show us this? Why share a discovery of this magnitude with us?" "Because they are not like us," Lyra answered, her voice chiming with a newfound clarity, a final, complete understanding. She looked at the faces of her lumina, at the leaders of her ancient, fragile civilization. "We saw them as a potential threat, so our first instinct was to study how to contain them. They saw a potential threat to all life in the universe, and their first instinct was to seek an ally." The full weight of the revelation descended upon the chamber. Humanity's calm professionalism, their desire to share knowledge, their deep, empathetic analysis of the consensus cultures, it had not been a prelude to conquest. It had been an evaluation. They had not me to be judged. They had come to see if the consensus was worthy of being a partner. Xyler turned his gaze from the hololith to the assembled lumina, his ancient mind finally grasping the full, terrifying, exhilarating scope of the situation. "For a billion years," he chimed, his voice resonating with the force of a breaking dam, "we have been the guardians of this galaxy. We have maintained the peace. We have nurtured life. We have curated a delicate, beautiful, and ultimately artificial order. We have been masters of a silent garden, all while a cosmic winter was approaching, a winter we did not even have the senses to perceive. The children of the death world, the species born of storm and struggle, they have heard the wind howling. They have felt the coming cold." He straightened to his full, majestic height, the light returning to his crystalline form, brighter and sharper than before. "Our age of certainty is over. The great silence of the consensus is at an end. We must learn a new way. We must learn to adapt, to struggle, to become resilient. We must learn to live." His gaze fell upon the students Lyra, Ilara, Kale, and the others. "You were sent to learn why their world is a place of death, and you have returned with the answer. It is not. It is a place of becoming, and now we must all become its students. Our first lesson," he declared, his voice ringing through the very structure of the chime hall, "will be to answer that ancient call, not as observers, but as partners, alongside the humans." Outside the chime hall on the crystal plains of Xyler, the stars of the Milky Way glittered with a sudden, fierce intensity. They were no longer just points of light in a peaceful, ordered sky. They were a frontier, a wilderness, filled with unknown dangers and boundless possibilities. A deep, resonant chime began to emanate from the hall, a sound that had not been heard for millennia, the sound of purpose, of unity, of a great and terrible adventure about to begin. The consensus had finally woken from its long, beautiful dream. Humanity, the terrifying and magnificent children of chaos, had arrived, and they had brought the universe with them. The students of the Death World had graduated, and their curriculum was now the cosmos itself. In the quiet observation dome of Stasis Point Kepler, Alara stood beside Ambassador Vance, their two vastly different forms silhouetted against the starfield. The human ship was preparing to depart, not for Earth, but for a designated rendezvous point where the first joint consensus human fleet was to assemble. It was a small fleet, a tentative first step into a much larger, darker unknown. "Are you not afraid?" Alara asked, her bioluminescent patterns a soft, swirling blue of contemplative calm. This silence. It consumed a civilization that spanned a galactic cluster. What can we possibly do against such a force? Ambassador Vance did not turn from the stardusted view. Her reflection in the transparent crystal was that of a frail, elderly woman, a creature of soft flesh and brittle bone, a being born on a world of crushing gravity and corrosive air. Yet, in her eyes, there was a light that dwarfed the distant suns. "Of course we are afraid," she said, her voice a quiet murmur. "Fear is a part of us. It's a survival trait. We have been afraid of the dark, of the cold, of the beasts that hunted us, of each other. We have been afraid of dying, and we have been afraid of living. Our entire history is a history of fear and of our refusal to surrender to it." She finally turned to face the young alien, a gentle, knowing smile on her ancient face. "You see, Alara, our world taught us a lesson you are only just beginning to learn. The universe does not owe you peace. It does not owe you stability or certainty. It owes you nothing but the opportunity to exist, and to exist is to struggle, to fight for every moment, to find meaning in the face of meaninglessness, to light a candle in an infinite, encroaching darkness, and to shield that flame with everything you are." She reached out and with a gesture of profound trust and fellowship, placed her small, wrinkled hand on Alara's strange, fungal arm. "We do not know if we can defeat this silence. We may fail. We may be extinguished, just like the civilization that sent that warning. But we will not fail quietly. We will not go gentle into that good night. We will face the coming winter, and we will build a fire so bright that it will burn in the memory of the cosmos for all time. That is what it means to be human, and we are honored to finally have someone to share the warmth with." Alara looked from the human's ancient, fearless eyes to the endless, star-strewn darkness beyond. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her being. But for the first time it was joined by something else, something warm and bright and utterly, terrifyingly new, hope. The Death World had given them not a promise of victory, but something far more invaluable. It had given them a reason to fight, and in the vast, silent, and suddenly very dangerous universe, that was everything.